Well, good morning, everybody. My clock says it's 10:30, so let's get this workshop going. I'd like to thank you for coming this morning and welcome you to Gardening in a Changing Climate workshop presented by the Master Gardeners of Placer County. My name is Brooke, and as you saw in the opening slides, this talk is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel after it is uploaded. The actual presentation and the accompanying resources can be found at our website, pcmg.ucanr.org. If you have questions during the talk, you can post them to the chat menu and our presenter will answer them at the end. Now I'd like to introduce Peggy Beltramo, and she is going to be discussing gardening in a changing climate. Take it away, Peggy.
Thank you, Brooke. Here we have our opening slide. And before I start, I want to mention that Master Gardeners are charged with trusting and reporting the science of gardening. So we will not discuss reasons for climate change, just looking at the effects. If we look at trends, we can better care for our gardens and make wiser choices. Who are Master Gardeners and where can you find us? We extend research-based sustainable gardening information to home gardeners so you can make your own informed decisions. We can be found right now online in the media, special publications. There are a number of different places you can find us. They're all available on our website. Those are active. These are places where you will find us when we are out in the community, which of course, due to COVID is on hold right now, but we are hoping that by the second half of the year, we may be able to open up some of our live events. Here's our homepage, lots to see on here. The green arrows, the green arrows show you where you can find more information. The gold banner, all of those are drop-down menus. There are 30 or 40 different articles there that will cover a multitude of information. The green arrow at the lower right-hand corner points to the vegetable guide, and I will show you that later on. My mouse is really jumpy this morning, I'm sorry. I'm trying to use my arrow and my computer keeps thinking I'm trying to go to the next slide, sorry. The Zoom upcoming events is listed here. The Zoom events that have already happened are here, and that's where you will find this presentation when it has been recorded and put on our YouTube channel. You can join our email list for more information. You can also subscribe to our Curious Gardener newsletter, which comes out quarterly and has lots of pertinent information for the season. And if you have a question of your own, you can ask a Master Gardener by clicking on this resource right here. Now, going on, let's look at the agenda. What is climate change? We'll look at that, the science of change, adapting gardening practices, being fire smart, and asking questions. A handout is available on the website when this has been uploaded. Let's look at what is climate change. It's measured in small increments. Changes add up over time, and it can have a huge impact on our gardens. Weather and climate. Weather is what's happening today outside. With the sun is shining, it looks like it's going to be cloudy. Climate looks at long-term 30-year averages of the daily weather. We'll talk about some climate change vocabulary. I promise there will not be a vocabulary test at the end, but it's handy to know what some of these terms are: mitigation, adaptation, phenology, synchrony, carbon sequestration, and ecosystem services. So looking at mitigation and adaptation, mitigation is actions to reduce the sources of greenhouse gas emissions. Adaptation is what we're going to be talking about, adjusting to the actual and expected climatic impacts. Phenology are the annual cycles of plants and animals. They're extremely sensitive to climate changes, and not all species respond with the same speed. We'll see that a little later on when we look at what some of those changes are. Synchrony are events that occur at the same time. If plants bloom before the pollinators are active, then they don't have the resources that they need. Birds could reproduce before the caterpillars arrive. Carbon sequestration. Plants remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during photosynthesis, transfer it to their roots where it is used and also stored. So it can be stored in the soil, in the ocean, and in plants themselves. An ecosystem is the community of organisms and their environment functioning as a unit. And the services are those benefits to human life or to other lives as well, such as clean water, food, and the decomposition of organic matter. Now we're going to look at 6 examples of the most common ecological responses that have been documented. Spring is arriving earlier. Leafing out and bloom events are happening earlier. Here's a map that shows areas in the United States where spring has come earlier or later, as you can see in the brown areas. Whoops, sorry. But we are experiencing 4 days earlier of spring on average. And I want to remind you that plants respond to single events, not to averages. Rising temperatures can be a good thing. We like the warm weather, but if it makes a longer allergy season or more persistent pests like mosquitoes. I've already had mosquitoes in my house. Here we are barely at the beginning of April. This one was surprising to me. More CO2 means bigger, more potent poison ivy. That's not a good thing. Frost and freeze damage threaten plants when the earlier spring is combined with more extreme winter storms. Think about Texas last month and the terrible catastrophe they had there with a snowstorm. Here are changes in heavy precipitation. You can see that the western states that are grouped together here has a 5% increase in very heavy precipitation. That doesn't mean more precipitation overall, but those big storms that we've been experiencing. Another change is a reduction in winter chilling, and that causes an effect on fruit and nut trees that require a certain number of chill hours to set fruit. We have 19 more frost-free days now than we did in the past. Again, we're lumped with, I guess they're the same 6 states. That we have shorter cold snaps too. 9 fewer days of cold weather, winter days below normal. Invasive species are more responsive to climate changes, facilitating naturalization and invasion. Notice all the pampas grass. This is along the coast south of here, where the pampas grass has escaped into the grasslands. It not only outcompetes other native plants, but it can actually, invasive plants can actually change the composition of the soil. For instance, broom plants store nitrogen. They are in the pea family and they have nodules on their roots that store nitrogen, but native plants prefer a nitrogen poor soil. So where broom is, other plants are outcompeted. You may recognize the Mexican feathergrass If you've been to the grocery store lately or Target, parking lots are full of this. Mexican feathergrass has tens of thousands of seeds that are dispersed by wind, water, and animals. And my favorite, star thistle. That one hurts when you walk through the field. Here's an area you can go to, plantright.org, which, I'm sorry, tracks. I'm going to keep my hands off that trackpad. Plantright.org is an organization that tracks where invasive plants are being sold and attempts to educate nurseries to choose a different plant. You can go to this and say, I really like pampas grass. I wonder what will give me the same effect. And PlantRight will show you plants you can choose instead of the invasive plant. And it's listed on that resource list. Another noted change is that extinctions have occurred in hundreds of species. Some plants have been going extinct up to 350 times faster than the historical average. It's hard to declare a plant extinct because you've got to be down on your hands and knees in some cases looking for a little teeny plant. So I chose to use monarchs because they have been widely studied and their plummeting numbers are easily documented to show you what has happened in the last 20 years. The green bars show you how many monarchs were counted. The blue line shows you how many sites were monitored where the monarchs were wintering. They check the overwintering populations. This is the Western monarch group. There's an Eastern monarch group too that goes from Mexico all the way up to Canada. But these are the sites in California and Baja that have been monitored. And you can see there were only 1,914 monarchs counted in 2020, down from 1.2 million. So the monarchs are really at a critical event. All right. This shows you the map of California and priority zones for recovering Western monarchs. We are a priority 2. The green arrow shows you that we want to protect and plant native milkweed and nectar plants and plant native nectar plants. Okay. I'm sorry, this is the first time I've given this talk. I'm a little bit stumbly. But I did want to mention that there is a controversy about Mexican milkweed, which some areas, for instance, Florida, where it doesn't go dormant, can cause problems with diseases that monarchs can be exposed to. But in our area, it usually goes dormant or even dies from cold weather. So you can cut it down at the end of the season so that it will have new growth in the spring. Here's an adaptation that bumblebees have discovered, that if they come early because of an early spring, but the flowers aren't blooming yet, they've learned that they can bite the leaves, which stresses the plant so that it will flower to produce seed to protect its offspring for next year. And the plant may bloom as much as a month earlier than normal. So this could help both the bee and plant resilience as well. I want to reiterate that plants react to extremes, not to averages. So with the uncertainty, keep your eyes on the weather. If you've planted tomatoes and there's going to be a cold snap, you need to respond appropriately. Protect what you have. Here are some adaptations to your gardening practices. We'll go through these a slide at a time. Monitor your garden. And here we are. Raise your hand if you keep a gardening journal. You can't see me, but my hand is part way up. I have a garden journal, but I'm not perfect about recording what's going on. But if you do, then you will be more aware of changes. Did your almonds bloom earlier or later this year, and how can that affect the trees? If they're blooming earlier, then you need, I'm not sure you can do anything if a cold snap comes with a full-sized almond tree, but it helps to be aware. You want to strengthen your soil's ability to store carbon. The best thing you can do is apply compost, yard waste, and other organic matter to the soil. It feeds the microbes and it sequesters the carbon. You want to eliminate or reduce tillage. We don't need to run a rototiller over the garden every year. What you do is disturb all the organisms that work together underneath the soil. A digging fork dug down into the soil and rocked back and forth can be enough to loosen the soil and allow the compost to get down into the soil. Use efficient irrigation, and you want to cover your soil either with cover crops. I'm specifically talking about a vegetable garden now. You want your soil covered. Bare soil is not as healthy as covered soil. You can use cover crops in the off season when you don't have crops growing for food, or even covering with straw. Remember, don't use hay bales because hay will give you a field of hay in your vegetable garden and you'll be trying to get rid of it and you'll probably call it a weed. So get the straw that doesn't have the seed attached. Another item on the resource list is this calscape.org. It is a site for California native plants exclusively. You can look up at here, it says there are 7,988 plants that are native to California. And if we go to the next slide, whoops, I didn't put it there. I can put in my own zip code. I can put in my own address and narrow the nearly 8,000 plants down to 600, which is still a lot. But if you see it, they are divided up into different categories: trees, shrubs, perennials, annuals, grasses, vines, part shade. You can go, whoops, to the advanced search area and just choose blue flowers, for instance, if you want a blue flowered. You can also sign in, the blue arrow up there, and whoops, I'm sorry. There is a gremlin at my house today. But you can sign in to Calscape and make your own plant list. And you can also look up nurseries. There is a new section on butterflies. So if you want to provide a host plant for monarchs, you can find out which plants. I'll give you a hint: milkweed. But other butterflies have other host plants where they lay their eggs and their young eat that plant. So you have to remember that caterpillars are going to eat the plant that you provide for them. We want to support the native pollinators. More than 75% of flowering plants depend on pollinators. 1 of every 3 bites of food that you eat is thanks to those pollinators. Again, we want to eliminate the invasive plants and weed your garden, or you can come and weed mine if you want. Adapt your food garden. You want to check the planting dates, and I'll show you that on the next slide. Choose varieties that are for your area. If you're in a warmer area or a colder area, you can choose varieties that like that kind of weather. Monitor the sun and the water. Here is our vegetable planting guide that I showed you on our website earlier. This is the warm season vegetable side. So it lists all the plants, well, a lot of the plants that you might want to put in now. This section right here shows you which seeds you want to start indoors and the ones that prefer to be direct sown in the garden. For instance, green beans. They don't show you starting seeds indoors. They show you to plant them right in the ground. Some plants prefer not having their roots messed with when you tip them out of the pot. You need to test for water. There's a little X over here. This is a cute little device, but it doesn't really measure the water. You can go deep if you get a soil probe, but the best thing is your hand, and reach down into the soil and monitor regularly for adequate irrigation. I wanted to add this, the Marin Master Gardener website, which is again on the resource list, has lots of climate resources that we don't have developed for placer yet. So the reminder is that those are Marin gardens that they're talking about. They're a different climate zone than we are. So you may need to read with one finger holding to your head, oh yes, I have to make sure I don't choose something for their climate. This is another page that they have where you can get more. And Climate and Microclimate is a good article if you're not sure what your climate is and what is your climate zone. Be fire smart. We all know that we are so much more susceptible to extreme wildfires. I want to show you this page, the 5 largest fires in California history. Last summer's August complex fire burned over 1 million acres. It was number 1, but 4 out of the top 5 fires acreage burned have been in 2020. Hotter years are higher fire risk. You can see the temperature has gone up only about 2 degrees, but that's a significant amount. In the long term, you can see that the slope is rising. Overall, it is increasing, and we have had significantly more large fires. This is the graph that shows wildfires with climate change that have occurred up to 2015, the orange band, and the yellow band is the estimation of what wildfires might have occurred without climate change. So be fire smart, prepare your defensible space, use fire resistant landscaping, and you can find all of that information on the resource list in the CAL FIRE packet that's called Ready, Set, Go, a personal wildfire action plan will help you lay out what you need to do to be fire smart. This is the Sacramento Valley Region report for climate change assessment. And that's on the resource list also if you want to learn a whole lot more about climate change. That's the end of this talk. I thank you for listening, and I apologize for all the bobbles, but next time, come back. Brooke?
Thank you so much, Peggy. That was awesome. Are there any questions? There's nothing in the chat box right now, but Peggy's available if you have any questions. I'll give you a minute to type if you like. I don't think anybody has any questions, Peggy.
Well, that's not because I covered it so well, but
I think it did. Well, I'd like to thank you all and thank Peggy very much and remind you that the link to the handouts and the presentation will be on our website. And if you are, while you're on the website, please take a look and see which other upcoming workshops you'd like to attend. And as Peggy reminded you, make sure that you check out if you have questions, if you're out of our geographical area in Placer, to check with your local Placer master, master gardeners for dramatic differences, climatic differences in your area. So with that, I will say thank you very much for joining us today. And oh, wait, there is one chat. Hold on, somebody type fast. Where is it? Hold on a minute. I'm trying to find it. I can see there's something here.
It's from Marilyn Gasper. Good information, Peggy. Thank you.
Thank
you're
you.
welcome, Marilyn. Glad to see you're here.
Okay. Anything else? I don't think so. Okay, thank you so much, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you at our next one, which is actually next weekend. So check the website. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, Peggy.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.